Have you ever stood in your home on a bitter winter day and felt that first welcome blast of warm air from the furnace? In that moment, you likely felt a deep sense of gratitude. It truly is a modern miracle, isn't it? We have become so accustomed to this instant warmth, available with a simple flick of a switch, that the alternative now feels almost unthinkable. We command comfort to push back the cold, and it obeys instantly. But what if there were no switch? What if there was no gas line running to your house and no electric grid to power a furnace? In that world, your warmth wouldn't depend on a distant utility company, but instead it would be a direct result of the work of your own hands, the wisdom of your ancestors, and the strength of your community.
Today, we're stepping into a world where that is the everyday reality. We are going to explore how the Amish heat their homes through the harshest of winters. They are a people who intentionally live apart from the public grid, and as a result, they have perfected a deeply ingrained system of ingenuity and tradition. This isn't just a story about survival. It's a look at how hard work and a unique philosophy have kept families warm for centuries. Because of this, it's a story about fire, family, and finding strength in simplicity.
The answer at first seems simple. They use a wood stove, and that's true. However, saying that is like saying a car is just an engine and four wheels. The reality is far richer and much more complex. The stove you see is merely the final glowing piece of a year-long puzzle. It is the culmination of immense foresight, detailed planning, and relentless effort that must begin long before the first snowflake even thinks about falling. The living room in an Amish home, which they call the stup in Pennsylvania Dutch, isn't just a place to sit. It's the absolute command center of family life. This is where stories are told, where quilting bees are held, and where children play on the floor. It is the central gathering point after a long day of work. That's why keeping this one space warm isn't considered a luxury. It's absolutely essential for holding the family together during the isolating months of winter. The methods they use are a masterclass in living in harmony with the seasons. So let's start peeling back the layers. We'll begin with the heart of the home itself, the stove, and from there we will work our way outward to the wood, the house, and the very mindset that makes this entire way of life possible.
The centerpiece of nearly every traditional Amish home is the stove. You won't find it tucked away in a basement or a utility closet. Instead, it's placed right there, in the middle of everything. It often sits centrally on the main floor, like a stoic black iron sentinel. Its placement is the first piece of their practical genius. By putting it in the center of the main living area, the heat it produces can then radiate outwards in all directions. As a result, it warms the floors, the walls, and the people from all sides. We all know that heat rises. Because of this, a stove on the first floor naturally allows that warmth to travel upwards, often through simple ceiling vents or just up the stairwell to the bedrooms above. This is a simple, elegant solution that uses basic physics to its greatest advantage. You won't find any complex ductwork here, which means the house itself is designed to circulate the air naturally. There are generally two types of stoves you'll find. The most common is the classic cast iron wood stove. These units are heavy, incredibly durable, and fantastic at radiating heat. They can take a while to warm up, but once they get hot, that thick iron holds onto the heat for hours. This leads to a steady, bone-deep warmth that you just don't get from modern forced air systems. It's a silent, penetrating heat. You can literally feel it in the furniture and in the floorboards. It's a living warmth. In some homes, however, you might see something a little different: a soapstone stove. Soapstone is a remarkable natural material. It absorbs heat much more slowly than cast iron, but it releases that heat even more gradually. As a result, A well-stoked soapstone stove can continue to radiate a gentle warmth long after the fire has died down to mere embers, sometimes providing comfort through most of the night. These stoves are often more expensive, but they are prized for their efficiency and their beautiful, steady heat.
The stove, however, is just a tool. The real art is in how it's used. An Amish family's day in winter revolves entirely around the rhythm of the fire. The first person up in the morning, usually the father, has a critical job. Before the sun rises, while the house is at its absolute coldest, he'll go to the stove. He will open the door, rake the old ashes, and check for any remaining hot coals from the night before. If he's lucky, a bed of glowing embers is waiting for him. With some carefully placed kindling, like dry twigs, wood shavings, or even corn cobs, and a few small pieces of wood, he will gently coax the fire back to life. It's a delicate process, almost like a conversation with the fire itself. You can't rush it. Because of this, you learn to listen to the crackle, to watch the way the smoke curls, and to understand exactly what the fire needs. Once the flames are firmly established, larger logs are added. The goal isn't a roaring, out-of-control blaze. That would be both inefficient and dangerous. Instead, the goal is a steady, hot, and clean burning fire. Achieving this requires a deep understanding of airflow. The stove's dampers and vents are the controls. Opening them lets in more oxygen, which makes the fire burn hotter and faster. Closing them down restricts the air, which slows the burn. This means you conserve wood and allow for a long, consistent release of heat. Every stove has a different personality, and it takes years of experience to learn the specific quirks of your family stove. You learn how it behaves when the wind is howling from the north versus on a calm, still day. Throughout the day, the stove is constantly tended to. Someone is always mindful of it. Wood is added as needed, and the kettle on top is always ready with hot water for tea or for washing. On its flat surface, a pot of soup might be simmering all day long, filling the home with a wonderful aroma and providing a hot, nourishing meal with no extra energy expended. That's why the stove isn't just a heater. It's a water heater, a slow cooker, and the social hub of the home. It's where wet mittens and socks are laid out to dry. It's the warmest spot in the house, and as a result, it's the place everyone naturally gravitates towards.
This lifestyle creates a profound, personal connection to the source of your comfort. You don't just pay a bill at the end of the month. You feel the physical weight of the wood. You smell the smoke, and you understand the direct relationship between your labor and your family's well-being. It's a powerful lesson in self-reliance. If you're finding this glimpse into a different way of life as fascinating as I do, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Now, where does all this wood come from? It doesn't just magically appear by the back door. The process of fueling that stove is a monumental year-round undertaking that completely defines the rhythm of Amish life. This is where the real work lies. The wood cycle begins in the dead of winter. This might seem counterintuitive. Why would you go out into the freezing cold to get wood for the next winter? But there's a very good reason for it. When the trees are dormant, the sap has gone down into the roots, which means the wood is at its driest point internally. It's also much easier to move heavy logs through the forest when the ground is frozen solid and there's no underbrush to fight through. A family will manage their own woodlot, or sometimes a community will manage a shared one. Sustainability is absolutely key. They aren't clear-cutting the forest. Instead, they practice selective logging. This involves taking out older, dead, or diseased trees first, and as a result, the entire forest becomes healthier. This is forestry the way it was done for 1,000 years. When they look at a tree, they see not just firewood, but the future of the forest. They understand that what they take this year directly determines what their children will have in 30 years. Felling the trees is done with incredible skill, often using traditional axes and two-man crosscut saws. While some more progressive Amish communities might use a chainsaw powered by a hydraulic pump on a tractor, many stick to the old ways. Because of this, there's a quiet efficiency to their work. You'll hear the rhythmic thump-thump of an axe, the steady shush-shush of a saw, and then the final groaning crack as a massive tree begins its slow-motion fall to the forest floor. It's dangerous work, and that's why it requires immense trust and coordination between the men. Once the tree is down, the hard work has only just begun. The branches are stripped off immediately. Absolutely nothing is wasted. Smaller branches are bundled for kindling. The main trunk is then bucked, or cut into manageable lengths, usually around 4 to 6 feet long. These heavy logs are then hauled out of the woods, often with a team of powerful workhorses. The sight of a team of Belgian drafts steaming in the cold winter air, straining against the weight of a massive log, is a powerful reminder of a time when muscle and animal power built this country. The logs are brought back to the homestead and stacked. But they're not ready for the stove yet, not even close. This is where the next phase begins, usually in the spring as the weather warms up. It's time for splitting. This is often a community affair, what used to be called a wood frolic or a splitting bee. Families come together to help one another, which turns it into a social event as much as it is a chore. The men will work in teams, splitting the large rounds of wood into smaller, usable pieces. You'll hear the sharp thwack of the splitting maul hitting the wood, followed by the satisfying crack as the grain gives way. It's a physically demanding, repetitive task, but doing it in the company of friends and family turns it into a ritual. It's a time for talk, for laughter, and for sharing the burden. While the men work, the women are often preparing a massive lunch. Because of this, these events reinforce the bonds of the community. They know that they depend on each other, and this is a tangible expression of that dependence. When you help your neighbor split his wood in April, you know he'll be there to help you raise a barn in July.
Here's a little story that an acquaintance who grew up near an Amish community in Ohio once told me. A new English family, as they call outsiders, moved in next to an Amish farm. The husband, a man from the city, decided he was going to be self-sufficient and heat his house with wood. He bought a brand new, top-of-the-line wood stove and a massive hydraulic splitter. In the fall, a huge truck came and dumped a giant pile of unsplit logs in his driveway. For weeks, the Amish family would see him out there after work, under floodlights, fighting with that machine, slowly working his way through the pile. He was miserable. One Saturday, his Amish neighbor, an older farmer named Samuel, walked over with 3 of his sons. He didn't say much. He just tipped his hat and said, "Looks like a job for more than one man." Before the city fellow could even properly respond, Samuel and his boys had picked up their axes and mauls. As a result, in a single afternoon of steady, unhurried work, they split the entire rest of the pile. They didn't ask for anything in return. They just saw a neighbor who needed help. For the Amish, community isn't an abstract idea. It's a verb. It's something you do.
Once the wood is split, the most crucial phase begins: seasoning. Green, freshly cut wood is full of water. Sometimes it's nearly half water by weight. Trying to burn green wood is a smoky, frustrating, and inefficient affair. It produces very little heat and a lot of creosote, a dangerous tar-like substance that can build up in a chimney. This can lead to a dangerous chimney fire. So, the wood needs to dry. The split wood is then stacked in long, neat rows. It's an art form in itself. The stacks, or ricks, are built specifically to allow air to circulate through the pile from every direction. They're often raised off the ground on runners, which prevents moisture from wicking up from the soil. They are also positioned to get maximum sun and wind. That's why this isn't a haphazard pile. It's a carefully engineered drying structure.
And then you wait. The wood needs to season for at least 6 to 12 months, and sometimes even longer for dense hardwoods. You can tell when wood is properly seasoned. It's lighter in weight, the bark is often loose, and you'll see small cracks called checks radiating out from the center of the log. When you knock two pieces together, they make a sharp, hollow clack sound, not a dull thud. An Amish farmer can tell the readiness of a piece of wood just by its feel and sound. They also have an intimate knowledge of the wood itself. They know that hardwoods like oak, hickory, maple, and black locust burn the hottest and the longest. Because of this, they create a long-lasting bed of hot coals that can keep a house warm through the night. These are the prized woods for the dead of winter. However, softwoods like pine or poplar are good for the shoulder seasons, the cooler days of spring and fall. They catch fire easily and burn hot and fast, which makes them perfect for quickly taking the chill off a room, but they don't have the staying power of the hardwoods. As a result, a well-managed woodpile will have a mix of both, used strategically depending on the weather and the time of day. By the time late autumn arrives, the wood that was cut last winter is finally ready. It's moved from the seasoning stacks to a place closer to the house, often into a dedicated woodshed or a sheltered porch, where it will be kept dry and accessible throughout the coming winter. The entire cycle from forest to flame has taken the better part of a year. Because of this, it's a constant visible reminder of the seasons and the planning required to live comfortably within them. When an Amish family sits in their warm living room, they are surrounded, quite literally, by the fruits of their labor from the entire year before. But the stove and the wood are only part of the equation. The house itself is a critical component of the heating system. Amish homes are built with a deep, practical understanding of what we now call passive heating. These aren't newfangled architectural concepts. They are age-old principles of construction born out of sheer necessity. Take the orientation of the house. Whenever possible, an Amish home is built to face south. The main living areas, with the largest windows, will be on the south side of the house. In the winter, the sun is low in the sky, and as a result, its rays shine directly into these south-facing windows, warming the home naturally all day long. This is free heat, and they harvest every bit of it. The north side of the house, which gets the brunt of the cold winter winds, will typically have fewer and smaller windows. That's why a row of evergreen trees will often be planted to the north to act as a natural windbreak, disrupting the flow of the wind and creating a pocket of calmer, slightly warmer air around the home. The windows themselves are another area of focus. While modern homes use double or triple pane windows filled with argon gas, the Amish have a simpler solution: storm windows. In the fall, they will go around the house and install a second layer of windows on the outside of the existing ones. This creates a pocket of trapped air, which is a surprisingly effective insulation. The result is a dramatic reduction in heat loss through the glass. Inside, the windows are not left bare. You'll find thick, heavy curtains or quilts hung over them. At night, or on particularly cold and overcast days, these are drawn closed. This isn't just for privacy, it's another layer of insulation. This leads to the warmth from the stove being prevented from radiating out into the cold night. It's a simple, low-tech, but highly effective strategy. Insulation within the walls of older Amish homes might not meet modern standards, but the construction is solid. They are built to last, with thick walls and careful craftsmanship that minimizes drafts. Newer homes, built by Amish crews, often incorporate modern insulation techniques, recognizing their value. The key is that the technology is in the home itself, not dependent on an external power source to function. That's why it's a passive system. The layout of the home is also intentional. The downstairs is often a large open space, allowing the heat from the central stove to circulate freely. The kitchen, with its wood-fired cook stove, is another major source of heat. In the winter, baking and cooking aren't just for making food, they're essential activities for keeping the house warm and the air humid, which makes it feel warmer. However, the upstairs, where the bedrooms are, is naturally colder. This is by design. They don't try to heat the entire house to a uniform 72 degrees because that would be an incredible waste of wood and energy. Instead, the living areas are kept warm and comfortable, while the sleeping areas are cool.
This leads us to the final and perhaps most important element of staying warm, the human factor. The Amish don't just heat the house, they adapt their own behavior and lifestyle to the season. They choose to live in the winter, not fight it. First, there's clothing. They dress in layers. Wool is a favored material because it's an excellent insulator, even when it gets a little damp. Long underwear is common. Indoors, people might wear sweaters or shawls. They understand that it's much more efficient to heat the person than to heat the entire volume of a room. At night, they sleep under piles of heavy handmade quilts. An Amish quilt is a thing of beauty, a true work of folk art, but it is, first and foremost, a practical tool for staying warm. The layers of fabric and batting trap body heat effectively, creating a warm cocoon even in a chilly bedroom. They might also use soapstones or bricks that have been warmed on the stove, wrapped in a towel and placed at the foot of the bed. As a result, their feet stay warm for hours. These are the original hot water bottles. Their diet also changes in the winter. They eat heartier foods, stews, roasts, and baked goods. These calorie-dense meals provide the body with the fuel it needs to generate its own heat. Hot drinks like tea, coffee, or hot cider are a constant. Holding a warm mug in your hands is a simple pleasure that provides immediate comfort.
Perhaps most importantly, their use of space changes. In the winter, family life contracts and physically centers around the stove. In the evenings, you won't find family members scattered in separate rooms, each staring at a screen. Instead, you'll find them gathered together in the warm living room. The children might be doing their homework at the kitchen table. Mother might be sewing or mending clothes in a rocking chair near the fire. Father might be reading the paper. You could call it a forced togetherness, but it's a togetherness that strengthens family bonds. They talk, they tell stories, they interact. The stove creates a physical and social gravity that pulls the family together. That's why the warmth they share is not just radiant heat from the fire. It's the warmth of human connection. There's another fascinating architectural and social tradition in many Amish communities called the Großdadi house, or grandfather house. As the parents get older and the children take over the main farm, a smaller apartment or house is built attached to the main one for the grandparents. This is a practical solution for elder care, keeping the family close. But it's also a heating solution. A smaller space is far easier and more economical to heat than a large farmhouse. This leads to the older generation living with dignity and comfort without the immense labor of keeping a massive home warm.
So, you see, it's not one thing. It's a holistic system. It's the stove, yes, but it's also the year-long preparation of the wood. It's the smart design of the house that works with nature, not against it. And it's the lifestyle adaptations, the clothing, the food, the way they gather as a family. All these pieces work in concert to create a bubble of warmth and community in the heart of winter. Now, it's important to acknowledge that not all Amish communities are exactly the same. The rules of the church, the ordinance, vary from one district to another. Some more conservative groups will stick strictly to wood. However, other, more progressive communities might permit other forms of non-electric heating. In some areas with access to local coal, a coal stove might be used. Coal burns even hotter and longer than hardwood, but it's dirtier and requires a different type of stove and chimney. You might also see propane or natural gas used, but only in a very specific, limited way. It would never be from a public utility line. It would come from a large tank on the property, and it wouldn't be used for a central furnace. Instead, it might power a small wall-mounted heater in a specific room, like a bathroom, or provide hot water. The key distinction for the Amish is the connection to the public grid. By owning their own source of fuel, they maintain their separation and self-sufficiency. That's why they are not dependent on the outside English world for their moment-to-moment needs. This brings us to the philosophy that underpins all of this. Why go to all this trouble? The answer lies in the core values of Amish life. One of the central concepts is Gelassenheit, a German word that roughly means submission or self-surrender to the will of God and the community. Part of this is accepting the natural world as it is. Winter is cold, that is God's design. The Amish feel that to simply press a button and erase that reality is a form of pride. Because of this, living through the winter, feeling the cold, and working for your warmth is seen as an act of humility. It keeps them grounded in the real world and in the turning of the seasons. The hard work of cutting, splitting, and stacking wood is seen as character building, which teaches discipline, patience, and foresight. Another core value is separation from the world. By not connecting to the electrical grid, they create a clear and tangible boundary between their community and the wider society. They believe this protects them from the temptations of modern life. As a result, their independence becomes a form of spiritual insulation. When you provide your own heat, your own food, and your own entertainment, your reliance shifts from outside systems to your family and your neighbors. This strengthens the community from within. Think about what happens in our world during a major power outage in the winter. For most people, it's a crisis. The heat goes off, the lights go out, and we feel helpless, completely dependent on a system we don't control. However, for an Amish family, a power outage in the surrounding area is a non-event. Their lives continue unchanged. The fire in the stove still burns, and the home is still warm. There is a profound sense of security and resilience in that. They have chosen a harder path, there's no doubt about it, but it's a path that gives them a level of control over their own lives that many of us have traded away for convenience. The warm living room of an Amish home in winter, then, is more than just a heated space. It's a symbol. It's a testament to a year of hard labor and the product of a home built with ancient wisdom. It is the result of a family and a community working together. It's the physical manifestation of a belief system that values self-reliance, simplicity, and togetherness. The glow from the stove's grate doesn't just illuminate the room, it illuminates a different way of being. It reminds us that comfort doesn't have to come from a complex, invisible network. It can come from something as simple and elemental as a piece of wood, a well-built stove, and the knowledge of how to use them. Because of this, it's a powerful lesson in a world that is constantly searching for ways to live more sustainably and more connectedly. The Amish aren't trying to be trendy or green. They are simply living the way their ancestors did, a way that has proven to be sustainable for generations. And in their quiet, steadfast example, there is a deep and enduring wisdom for us all. I'll see you in the next video.